once again. Thanks for joining us here on this week's Leading Edge. I'm your host, Jeff Smith. Coming up in a few minutes, did you ever see the documentary called Neat? It's the story of bourbon, where you learn the ABCs of the distilled spirit, and in the last 20 years, it seems to have really taken off in popularity. A friend of the show suggested that I bring our guest on to discuss the topic, and that happens in just a few. But first, she's been on ABC's Good Morning America, The Jennifer Hudson Show. She's been written about in Us Weekly. She's a former teacher and coach locally, and she has been a walking billboard since 2015 when it comes to the autoimmune disease that she faces every day of her life. She's been a guest to our show before, but never to talk about an accomplishment like this. Take a look at your screen. McKenna Reitz is about to release her first book ever. It is called Never Have a Bad Hair Day. I don't know if we have a picture of the book that we can show people at home or not. There it is. Redefining Resilience by Embracing Life Challenges. McKenna is nice enough to join me. This isn't your first time on the show. We want to put that out there, but very different circumstances because this is another one of those benchmarks for you in your life. And I just want to start off by saying congratulations.
Thank you. And, to be able to celebrate it with you, someone who's become such a great friend and everything you do for Toledo, it's just such an honor to be here and being the first to talk about it.
Well, I'm glad to have you here. So this has been a labor of love. Can we put it that way?
Yeah, a lot of sweat and a lot of tears also. It's been, a 4-year process, but more of being at the right time and the right place mentally and emotionally to be able to...
What do you mean by that?
Writing a book.
Why weren't you ready before?
When I started to write it, I just started going out bald. Mm-hmm. And I still wasn't where I needed to be, but I did...
So we're talking almost a decade ago. You started to jot down notes.
4 years ago, because it took me until COVID, where I finally stopped wearing my wigs.
I gotcha.
And so that's when I'm like, I want to write a book, but then you get in your own mind, am I a writer? Am I good enough? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just life. And then I stopped writing because I didn't think I was good enough and that my story wasn't where it needed to be. But I wasn't where I needed to be yet, but I am now.
How was McKenna Reitz jotting down notes? I mean, what did it look like? What did it read like?
It was a lot of talking. I did a lot of walking and talking and recording. Mm-hmm. So you and I love to talk. We love to be, and be in front of people and talking, but to be sitting in front of a computer it's chilling, just to be by yourself with your own words and not knowing where to even begin.
Your voice changes,
Your voice changes. And I love to talk and communicate. And so I just started to record myself talking. And I started just to put words down, stories that have been very substantial in my journey, whether it's before I lost my hair, during, or now. And then trying to create a puzzle and put the puzzle pieces where they needed to go.
I told you I wanted, and in our second segment, I want to talk more about Diagnosis Day and how that kind of framed this for people. As we kind of give the Cliff Notes version, if you will, of the book, because obviously we need more time to really dive into this bad boy. But when you think about the chapters you were forming and what you want people to walk away with, what was the one thing that you said? And I know it has to do with strength.
It's understanding that when you're weak, that is when you're most strong. And it's understanding that your story has a message for others. But not only is your message, but it's medicine for other people. To understand that we are strong enough to get through anything.
Yeah. Did you find that? Did somebody enlighten you with that?
Having incredible parents who have instilled such strength, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional strength growing up, gave me the strength to be able to continue showing up for my daughters, going through a very dark storm. But I learned that alopecia happened for me and not to me. But once I was able to reframe that mindset, it was a whole new picture for me. And that's where I found out I am truly the strongest.
You were a young girl who was always doted on, always told how pretty she was. Your hair was flowing, long locks of hair. Yep. You prided yourself on your hair. How hard was it for you 4 years ago to say, I am bald?
Once I got out of my own way, once I started to understand that my reflection is beautiful and that I have 2 young daughters who are watching my every move, that I wanted to not only teach them what is self-love, but to be able to celebrate and unconditionally support adversity and diversity. They gave me the strength to go out bald. And then little by little, every day, it got easier and easier to see my reflection and to see beauty.
Some of this book, you're going to talk about embracing vulnerability, transform challenges into opportunities, building resilience, inspire and empower. But when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about Diagnosis Day and how that changed your life for the better, as you put it. McKenna Reitz joins us. We'll be back on Leading Edge right after this. Welcome back here on Leading Edge. Great to have you with us. I am Jeff Smith. We wanted to let you see once again the book that is about to be released in September, Never Have a Bad Hair Day. It's author McKenna Reitz, Sylvania's own, and Springfield's own too, because you came from being a teacher, AP Physics, psychology, excuse me, got the P's wrong there, psychology, as well as being a coach for so many over the years, for volleyball, something that you played as well to all levels. You have a chapter in there talking about beyond the classroom and how you had to embrace this, not only for yourself, but for your students and your athletes.
You know, as students, you always look at your teachers and you think they have a cot in the back and they have no lives and they just live in the school. And this journey allowed me to humanize myself, to be able to put us almost on the same playing field, to understand you're going through something and so am I. And I have this incredible responsibility that my story is visible wherever I go. And so I have the opportunity, I get to empower others who get to hide their stories. And I wanted my students to understand they're not alone. We're all in this together. We're all going through something. We all have our own mountain.
Talk to me about marketing yourself, because you have been out there, TEDx speeches. We talked about Good Morning America, about being on the Jennifer Hudson show, going out to LA, doing that. But I mean, there's that wall of vulnerability that you have to drop on a huge stage.
Yeah, you know, when I was going through the dark storm, I learned that sharing my story, bringing awareness to alopecia, educating one person at a time, can reframe their mindset. Instead of immediately thinking the worst of myself, they can think, oh, maybe it could be alopecia, which then can reframe their neuronal connections, which is going to cause their next thought to be positive and their interaction. And so during a very dark storm, it gave me hope, it gave me light. It gave me a purpose to focus on rather than focusing on that storm that I was going through. And so that gave me a purpose.
Your why.
My why.
Yeah.
You know, and that it allowed me to share my story, and realizing the impact that sharing my story will continue to have on others.
And we've seen video, you know, we've covered it over the years of you being out at the University of Toledo basketball games and a golf outing that WTOL has been proud to sponsor time and time again. So going above and beyond the call of duty you are. I want to go back to the very beginning stages and how tough it was to open up about the diagnosis, because there is that moment where you feel you've been punched in the gut and you don't know how people are going to respond, how quickly they're going to get back up. How hard was it to get back up?
And that's what about resilience is resilience is not only just getting back up, but thriving because of it. It was 3 quick weeks. 90% of my hair was gone within 3 weeks. And I remember staying in the shower with my hands full of hair. And I felt as though as every strand of hair that fell out, my identity was being ripped away from me. And I didn't know how I was still gonna survive, how I was still gonna be a mom, a teacher, you know, a coach, a wife. Is my husband still gonna love me?
How hard was that? What was that conversation like with Greg?
Well, if you know my husband, he's also bald, thankfully. So if he had a great head of hair, it'd be a completely different story. But you know, he said to me, McKenna, it's just hair. And in that moment, I was really upset because he didn't see it, because as women, we subconsciously identify with our hair. And I said, I was thinking he doesn't understand.
You got angry.
I got really angry. And it wasn't until probably year 6 where I stopped in my own tracks and looking at my reflection, realizing my husband loves me beyond my hair, beyond me, but I didn't love me.
Yeah.
And once I discovered that self-love, then it just realized that I knew I was blessed with an incredible husband, but I have a husband who truly loves me unconditionally and always has.
Greg, also a coach. He understands. You guys are kindred spirits.
Yes.
I have to say that. He coaches the men's volleyball out at Lourdes University. Do want to put that in our last couple of minutes. And I could talk about this with you forever and ever, and we've had long talks. At the end of the day, what are you most proud of as far as this accomplishment is concerned?
I'm showing myself that I am enough. You know, my goal is to empower other females, other males, my daughters, that we are enough to be able to do anything that we put our minds to. And this has been my Achilles heel of putting it pen to paper. And to be able to hold my book is going to be the most incredible feeling. And it's showing that we truly are capable of anything. And to understand that we are never having a bad hair day. Once we can reframe that mindset and understand that life challenges can be turned into incredible opportunities, I just proved it to myself time and time again.
In our last 30 seconds, what was the hardest chapter to write?
Losing my hair.
That was it.
Hands down. Probably that or leaving teaching. Two very difficult things that mean the world to me.
Yeah. The book is available starting when?
September 17th.
September 17th,
Yep.
and the world can start reading about the challenges and the resilience
Yes.
that exists in one. McKenna Reitz from Sylvania.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I
Absolutely.
appreciate you.
Congratulations
Thank
on
you.
this accomplishment,
Thank
and
you.
we appreciate you sharing the time with us once again here on Leading Edge.
Thank you.
McKenna, good to see you. Stay right there. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back. Thanks for being here. As always, a couple of weeks ago, outgoing Greater Toledo Community Foundation President Keith Burwell, he was at an event, stopped by our studio, and he told me, you have to get this next guy on your show because he's knowledgeable, he's entertaining, no pressure, and engaging, and his specialty is in the spirits. The distilled spirits, that is. Say hello to whiskey ambassador Elliot MacFarlane. Good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
This is awesome. Now, he and I were chumming it up in the green room, chatting it up in the green room, trying to get to know what we were going to talk about here, because I don't want to seem foolish. I don't want to seem stupid, because this is an acquired art. And you told me you've gone to school. Not only literally, but figuratively, as far as whiskey and bourbon is concerned.
It's great. You can go to whiskey school. You got to go to Scotland, but you can go to whiskey school.
Which you did.
Yeah.
And what is that
Wonderful time.
process like?
Well, you learn how to make the product.
Yeah.
You show up day one and they hand you a shovel and you start moving grain and you learn from there up.
Talk to me a little.
Make whiskey.
Talk to me a little bit about this, I guess, affinity. Did it find you? You find it?
I think it found me. I was doing a lot of volunteer work in Scotland, and you're over there, you tend to drink local whiskeys, and you learn a lot about them, and I get home and people ask me, and one thing led to another. Next thing I know, I'm talking about it in public, and people are like, wow, whiskey, I'm like, yeah, it's a good thing.
Now, you think foreign country, the pressure's on. Did you have to know your stuff early on? That was something you assimilated in being in country and came to know?
You have to know what you're talking about. If
Yeah.
you go to somebody's country like Scotland, who's most famous in the world for their whiskey, you can't bluff your way through it. So yeah, you do have to learn a lot about the process and the different types and wonderful whiskeys that are available.
I talked a little bit about the documentary Neat that over the course of the last few years has really grabbed an audience. And do you find, is it naive to say that bourbon has become more popular over the last decade? Or
No, it has, definitely.
why is that?
I think it caught on in the United States because they expanded production and so many new bourbons became available. I think people wanted a product that we could call our own. Bourbon is uniquely American. You can only really make it in the U.S. and call it bourbon. And
I'm going to stop you there. Why?
it's protected. You know, federal law.
Okay.
Bourbon. The name bourbon is a whiskey that's predominantly corn based, and you can make it anywhere. You could make bourbon in that whiskey in some other country. You just can't call it bourbon.
Interesting.
So the name is protected in the United States, and the rules are very strict about how bourbon is made and what's in it. And
It's
real tough.
It's a debate as old as time. What is the difference between whiskey and bourbon?
well, all bourbon is whiskey.
Okay.
But there are other varieties of whiskey, like Scottish whiskey and Irish whiskey and Canadian and rye and Japanese, right? There's lots of different kinds of whiskey. Bourbon is one of the kinds.
Here's what I find interesting. You and I were talking about you will be called in, or you will be called upon locally, across states, to come in and sit down, talk people through their bourbon knowledge or lack thereof. And you will also go to dinners where, like a wine dinner, you're pairing bourbon with dishes, with appetizers, I don't know, with desserts, things of that
usually
nature.
5 courses, including
How
dessert.
does that work? How is it different than what people know as you're putting a Merlot with this beef or things of that nature?
You need to know a lot about the whiskeys so that you can think about how to pair them with food. There's a lot of difference. Some of them are very sweet, some of them are very earthy, some of them have a lot of grain flavor and oak. And there are certain things you can't really serve. There's not much, but there are some things that just don't go with whiskeys. Kind of like a red wine dinner, there's certain dishes that aren't served with a dinner like that.
They tell
So
you
have
white
to learn
wine,
about
eat that with fish,
Right.
red wine, eat it with beef. I mean, is bourbon the same?
Bourbon goes with most things. Scottish whiskey, Irish whiskey, there's just certain spicy food, a lot of vinegar, goat cheese, things that affect your palate. You can't really have those at any kind of tasting, not just whiskey. Wine dinners are the same.
I wanted to talk, in fact, we were talking in the green room. I said, what's your palate? How has it changed over the years? What do you like tasting in bourbon? What are some of the flavors that make a good bourbon in your estimation? Because like you said, not everybody's going to agree with you.
No,
right?
they don't. And there's always at least 2 or 3 people in the room that know more than I do. The thing about bourbon is that being a unique product, and it's made very similarly all over the United States, although the vast majority of it comes out of Kentucky and Tennessee, you can make it anywhere in the U.S. Any state can make bourbon. So bourbons are all very similar because the recipe that's involved and the way that it's aged in oak barrels, that makes it unique. And you can pick out any kind of bourbon. You can get the 5 or 10 best bourbons in America, and if you nose them, if you smell them, if you really took the time to think about what you're smelling, they're all going to smell very similar. And most of that comes from the barrels that are used.
What are the hints of things that you
Vanilla.
think? Okay.
Vanilla's a big one. And some people call
As a good note?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. And some people call it butterscotch or caramel, but it's a vanilla smell. And that's unique to bourbon, and it comes through very strongly. And so if you're not a fan of butterscotch, vanilla, one of those, you're probably not going to drink a lot of bourbon.
But here's a stupid question. Is vanilla bean or vanilla hints put into the barrel?
No.
Then how does it come about?
It's a reaction of corn alcohol with new oak barrels. It's a chemical reaction.
No kidding.
It creates a flavor and a nose, a smell. And that includes this vanilla butterscotch kind of smell.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of tannins, a lot of oil and moisture still in the oak that the barrels are made out of. And the grain, the alcohol made out of the corn grain interacts with those things that are in the oak. And that chemical reaction creates smell and a lot of the flavor that you get in a bourbon and why people like bourbon.
Is there a whiskey trail in Scotland similar to what we know and have heard of
Well,
in
the original
Kentucky?
whiskey trails in Scotland. Yes, there is. Extensive. You know, there's a lot more distilleries in Scotland than there are in Kentucky and Tennessee. There's 130 or 40, depending on, you know, who's opened recently.
And we're
in
talking
Scotland.
modern facilities, or we're talking
no,
old
they
school?
vary. Some of these
Yeah?
go clear back into the 1700s.
Yeah.
Old school.
And still exist.
Still exists, still cranking out some wonderful whiskey. And Ireland's the same way. There's several old ones in Ireland. Bushmills, for instance. These
Yeah,
guys
talk
have
about what you brought out
This is
here.
Bushmills is Irish. These guys have been around since 1608. They're very proud about that. They put it right on the bottle.
Now, are
So-
all of these available in Northwest Ohio and
yes,
Southeast Michigan?
Yes, this is Irish. This is a Balvenie. This is a Scottish whiskey, and this is Stranahan's. Good local connection, same family. They were instrumental in getting a distillery going in the Denver area at least 20 years ago, and they make an American single malt. It's the same as these are all single malt whiskeys, which means there's just barley in these. There's no other grain. And so 3 nice ones from the U.S., from Ireland and from Scotland.
What makes them nice? I mean, I
like
have
them.
It can't be as easy as that.
Well, that helps. You know, I'm a whiskey ambassador for the United Kingdom, so I specialize in Scottish whiskeys. But over the years, I've learned to like other whiskeys. You're drawn to it.
Is it too simpleton to say it's smooth?
No, many of them are smooth, and that's why people like them. Bourbon is generally considered smooth, sweeter than Scottish whiskey, and a little smoother. It doesn't have a bite to it that you can get in some Scottish whiskey.
You didn't pull out of your sample case a Pappy Van Winkle, which has, through the years, everybody talks about it. It's an expensive bottle. I'm interested. Is that a good whiskey?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It is. And if you could get it for the price that's listed at the state store, you should buy it. Unfortunately, whenever bottles show up, there's a long line of people waiting for it, and the first thing most of them do is go home and advertise it on the internet somewhere and sell it for 5 times what they paid.
We've got about a minute left. I know you have dinners coming up, and you said these happen all over the place, right?
Yeah, I'm going to be at Chow, a wonderful restaurant here in Toledo. I've been there for a decade. I'm going to be there next month, September. You have to check their website, Facebook for it. Just did a couple of nice things at the Sylvania Country Club recently. I've got events coming up. I'm going to be in Montana in a couple of weeks doing some wonderful whiskey tastings in the area where I grew up, where my grandfather lived. Nice.
Elliot, you are fascinating and you are a pleasure, and I'm so glad to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It was good to meet you. Stay right there. We'll wrap things up for this week right after this. I just want to say thank you once again. We are always so honored that you are a part of our show each and every week. And as a reminder, if you missed any part of our interviews, and I think you're going to want to go back and watch this show again, you can find us on the WTOL 11 YouTube page. It's also a podcast. We'll see you next time. Peace.